Welcome back to Rides and Drives Team Radio. I'm Harvey. I'm here with Kaz, and we are still in our post-Indy bliss right now, a little bit, I think, but getting ready to turn the page to Detroit. The Detroit Grand Prix is this weekend, and we're excited to see what happens next in the IndyCar season. But we had a couple of notes about Indy, right, Kaz?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that something that is underrated about the Indy 500 that we don't talk about enough is that we pretty typically get another great race right after. So there's not this period of mourning that your great race is over because guess what? We've got another one coming up. And it doesn't leave you enough time to really dissect everything out of Indianapolis. But just a few things to touch on before we move on to Detroit. The everything since the race. There's just been a really dominant story, and that's been David Malukas and the way he has handled his really heartbreaking, tragic loss. He's in good company in terms
Right.
of people who have lost here on the last lap in a pure tragedy. But
Pato.
I just think that the Pato, yeah, very
Yeah.
recently, I just think that the way he's been handling it has been it's really demonstrated why he's a great race car driver and makes me really hopeful for him moving forward. And he's also just been super classy and easy to be a fan of.
Yeah, I think first of all, the emotions he showed at the end of the race, the time he got to spend with his mom right after the race in the media room, his outpouring there, and just still really raw emotion. And then at the banquet on Monday night, and his comments and his reaction and his graciousness and just the way he seemed to be processing it all. For a 24-year-old, he's a really mature young man who I really feel like has the wherewithal to be a champion based on that.
And I do want to say too, and I don't want to like go in too hard on like a feminist rant by any means, but I sometimes it's hard to be in spaces where masculinity is kind of the dominant emotion. Emotion is not right, but you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
really, really nice for a young man to be encouraged to cry when he cares about something this hard.
Well, yeah. I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and I don't think, you know, um, I was really pleased that there was no negative backlash on that,
Hmm.
right? Um, I can't imagine 40, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
AJ
Not
Foyt or
even 40,
Parnelli
50.
Jones or some of those guys reacting this way or how they would have taken it. But
Not even 40, 50, dude. When I was a
yeah,
kid, if a male athlete cried, the words that were used to describe him were both stupid and unflattering.
right.
So I'm really, really happy to see that we're entering a world where young men can express their emotions in that way and not have it. It's just great. And I love David for it. I think he's brave for being so
Hmm.
expressive. And I think he's cool. So good job,
Cool.
David.
And in addition to David, I think we have to say good job to another driver in the 500, and that is Santino Ferrucci, um, because he finished in the top 10 for
Hmm.
the eighth consecutive year. That is a record.
Harvey
Crazy. I
told me
didn't
that.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Harvey told me the stat about 5, 10 minutes ago. And of course, we all know Santino is good at the 500, but I guess I had never really sat down and looked at his finishes consecutively like that. That is a legendary stat.
Yeah.
That is a historic stat that
Yeah.
our young Santino holds. That's amazing for him.
Well, yeah, it was interesting in the press conference today. He did a press conference. He talked about that and talked about, how India has always, excuse me, been good to him. And so I thought that was great. And then he went on to say, and I'm really excited because I've gotten all my bad courses out of the way now, and the
Mhm.
rest of the season I can't wait to get going. So he finished second at Detroit last year. He finished,
Santino has a couple courses coming up that
yeah,
he's
Road
had strong
America,
finishes. Road America
obviously.
is right around the corner, and his third place podium finish there last year was one of my favorite podiums I've ever seen.
Right.
He's got a lot of upside coming his way, and I think that the attitude he was showing throughout all of the weekends that we spent at IMS with him, I mean, he was just easygoing, casual. He was looking like he felt good.
Yep.
Um, and he is another guy who, to an extent, kind of wears his heart on his sleeve a little bit. And if
Yeah.
he's not feeling good, you will know. So I think he's a guy to keep your eye on moving into Detroit for
Yeah.
sure.
And,
And the
and
next couple of races to follow.
yeah, as we record this, he's in the motorhome driving up to Detroit from Indianapolis with Coda. He said with the Kodak.
Kodak.
Sorry, with
Yeah,
Kodak. I don't know why I
I
said.
never forget a dog's name. It's
Yeah, he's
really important
driving
to
up
me that
with
I
Kodak.
respect all
He
dogs.
said he said I'll be driving up with the dogs, so he has more than one with him. But yeah, he's driving up to Detroit, and yeah, he's super excited to be heading that way. So that's fun, and that's a good segue into, I think, this race, the Detroit Grand Prix. In 2023, it was moved from Belle Isle back to the streets of Detroit. And I'm really glad that it's on the streets of Detroit. I just wish it were on better streets in
I
Detroit.
wish we were on different streets of Detroit.
At least a couple of different streets, but we can talk about that a little bit. If you look at the course map, it's not a pretty track. And,
No.
there are a bunch of 90-degree left and right hand turns. There's only one section with a little bit of an S in it. There are two, maybe three real passing zones, into going into the hairpin, uh, going into turn 8, and then again going into turn back into turn 1, off the off the start finish line. So it's really it's not my favorite track. And I don't think it showcases the city of Detroit well. I know
Mhm.
you had some thoughts about the track.
Well, my issue, you mentioned the hairpin. So let's go there.
Right.
We're still using the same streets to create the hairpin as we were in 2024, 2025. I
Right.
haven't looked at the 2023 track, so I'm not sure about that, but I'm guessing it's the same. There have been a couple of races here where that hairpin has been more chaos than fun. You want a challenging hairpin on a street course. You want to have to slow down significantly and try and get a good exit out of it. But God, the 2024 race, I remember watching that. I remember sitting on the couch with my husband, and he had not watched a lot of IndyCar. He was really into the 500, and
Hmm.
we had a couple of other friends who had watched the 500 with us and had not watched any IndyCar outside of that, and they were texting me. And it was, I mean, I remember a period where we had like 2 laps of green, caution because of the hairpin. Get the track cleared. One more lap of green, caution because of the hairpin. And this happened over and over and over. Now
Right.
you can take the same streets and build the barriers differently. So, and that was 2 years ago. Last year's was better. But
Yeah.
I am really, really cautious going into this race every year. That hairpin just drives me crazy. I want it to be exciting. I want it to be dynamic, but I also want it to be something that's not like so challenging that you can't, like you said,
Yeah. It
that's
shouldn't.
one of the passing opportunities on the track. So people are going to try and use it. You need to build it in such a way that that's feasible.
Yeah, it shouldn't feel like figure eight track at a county fair where you're just waiting for people to crash into each other. This, I think if you look at the Canadian Grand Prix last weekend, they have a hairpin there that sets up some really exciting action
Mhm.
going in and coming out of it. And you can have that because with those slow speeds coming out of a hairpin, I think Long Beach is the same way. With those slow speeds coming out of a hairpin, you get really interesting differences in acceleration, who's got the grip,
Mhm.
who doesn't. I have no problem with a hairpin. I just think there it doesn't work well in this track configuration.
That
And
one
then,
hasn't always been well designed.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So I mean, not my favorite track from a layout standpoint, but I grew up in Detroit. Detroit is one of my
mhm.
favorite cities, and I would love to, when you watch the race on TV, it doesn't showcase the city well. Yeah, you get those overhead shots of the riverfront and everything, and a lot of people don't realize that, Detroit is this waterfront town that has a
Hmm.
beautiful, a beautiful riverfront area where there's, Hart Plaza and all these great entertainment opportunities there. But then if you move off the riverfront into the city, the architecture is beautiful. It was a city built in the 20s and 30s by the auto industry, so the deco architecture is unbelievable. And there's art and all kinds of, public art and fountains and things that they could be incorporating into this if they, go to Campus Martius or some of those other areas. And and just as a Detroiter and a car guy, it kind of pains me that the track doesn't touch Woodward Avenue, one of the most legendary car streets in the United States. So
Yeah.
I played around myself with just what would my ideal Detroit track be, and trying to take it through a couple areas. I'm working on finishing the article now for an overview.
Draw
Maybe
it
I'll
up.
draw it up. But
Draw it up.
the other thing about the Detroit course is it's only 1.76 miles, I think, long. So
Hmm.
1.645. It's a short track with 10 turns. It's just not that interesting. There's very few elevation changes, and
Yeah.
that, part of just the landscape there. But it's not my favorite track, but we're going to be racing there, so let's go have some fun.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially on for me, I don't know Detroit nearly as well as you do, though I have spent some phenomenal time there. It is a city that really does have an identity built into it that you can feel everywhere. And when you watch this race, it could be anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
could be any manufacturing city in the United States.
Well, think
So
about
you've
how,
got such an opportunity here to showcase a
right.
city that's instrumental in the auto industry.
Think
So
about
it just
how
seems like a
St.
miss.
Pete showcases their
Hmm.
area, or Long Beach showcases that area, or the Toronto streets of Toronto race showcased downtown Toronto. Now they're moving
Look, I
out to
thought
Markham. We'll
Arlington
see.
did a great
Yeah,
job. That
I,
that felt like Texas.
yeah. But so I'd love it if they'd take a look at that track, make it a little longer, have it run through a little more of the iconic areas of the city of Detroit. But, that's not in our control. So let's just enjoy what they give us. And speaking of
Well,
enjoying what they
speaking
give
of
us,
Detroit,
yeah.
yeah. Harvey, why you grew up there? Why do you love Detroit so much? And what do you have to do while you're there?
Well, I mean, I love it because I did grow up there going to Tigers games and Lions games in Tiger Stadium, which is no longer there. Going to Red Wing games in the old Olympia Stadium, which is no longer there. Joe Louis Arena was there, but now they play in the Little Caesars Arena. Anyway, um, it's a great downtown. It's classic architecture. There are great restaurants, art, museums, library, all that stuff that when you talk about New York, Chicago, those cities, Detroit has all that, and people just never talk about it. The Detroit Institute of Art is one of the great art museums in the country. And if you have an extra couple hours on Saturday while you're in town for the race, go to the DIA. Man, the murals in the opening hall are just an unbelievable overview and tribute to the auto industry. The Diego Rivera murals, there's just all kinds of phenomenal artwork in there, both local, regional, and global artists. There's Van Gogh in there, bunch of other stuff. Also, there's the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village, which is, one of the
Which is
great
silly, but
what
great.
yeah, I mean, Henry Ford was this incredible collector of stuff, and it
Hmm.
wasn't just automotive stuff. There are, again, this is one of those places you have to go to 4 or 5, 6 times to even start to scratch the surface. He took and rebuilt the Wright brothers bicycle shop brick by brick from Dayton, Ohio, and moved it to Dearborn, Michigan.
Hmm.
Edison's laboratory is
Yep.
there. I mean, it's just unbelievable what he did.
It's
So,
a wacky place and it can't be
yeah.
described really. You just kind of have to go.
So
It's a lot of fun.
yeah, if you're interested in history, the automobile, all that stuff, art, Detroit has it all. It's such a
Hmm.
great place, and it has a world-class zoo, which my great grandfather happened to be one of the founders of and endowed a number of the early exhibits. And there's even a train that runs around with little kids, that little kids can take from exhibit to exhibit with that's called the Walter O. Briggs train. So
So go ride
still
our
there.
train. Go
So
ride our
go to
train
the
while you're
zoo
in
and
Detroit.
ride the train. Yeah, lots of fun stuff in Detroit. I'm can't wait to get back there. Always love going there. The other thing we talk about in Detroit is, where are you going to stay? Where are you going to eat? What's all the good stuff there, right?
Hmm. I'm ready to talk about the food.
Yeah. What kind of food are you looking for when you go to Detroit?
I have to eat two things when I go to Detroit every time as a stereotype. There is a lot of great food in Detroit, but what I am craving every time is a Coney dog and a true Detroit style pizza. Detroit style pizza in particular is like having its moment right now. It's very
Hmm.
popular. A lot of towns outside of Detroit have a Detroit style pizza restaurant. I have to let you guys know I've only had it done right once. It was in Morgantown, West Virginia. Shout out lefties. You guys nailed it. But
Hmm.
outside of that, I've never really experienced it done truly properly. So if you think you are a fan of Detroit style pizza from what you've eaten in your hometown, or if you think you are not, I really recommend that
Yeah.
if you're in
Get a
Detroit for the
slice in
race,
Detroit.
get a slice. Harvey, where
Uh,
do they go?
They got to go to Buddy's. Buddy's is the
Yep.
original Detroit pizza place right downtown there. You don't have to go too far from the track. That's one of the great places. So go to Buddy's Pizza for your Detroit pizza. Coney dogs you mentioned. That's another iconic Detroit food. It was really brought by a couple of Greek families that came in there, and there are a number of Coney Island restaurants around Detroit. Downtown, you'll find American and Lafayette, Coney Island, right next to each other. It's this great sort of restaurant war. And we are Lafayette, Coney Island people,
Yeah, if you
but
guys are curious, the Briggses are a Lafayette family. So
but
take that as you will.
one of the places, if you don't mind getting off the beaten path a little bit, um, you know, search out Dooley's Place. It's a great Coney Island restaurant. Actually, when Anthony Bourdain did his episode on Detroit, he went there and just, again, really great place, top-notch Coney dogs, a little neighborhood bar
Hmm.
that has a much less touristy feel than Lafayette or American
Sure.
do, but it's not like the Lafayette or American dogs are bad. Dooley's is just another level. So go try that one, and then because some people like
Not
to eat
every meal's a hot
fancy.
dog.
Right. I think one of my favorite restaurants in downtown Detroit, and this I'm going back to classics here, kind of like St. Elmo's in Indy.
Hmm.
You got to go to the London Chop House if you want a great steak, classic meal served with, white glove, white tie service, all of that. We used to take our Chevrolet clients there before the Detroit Auto Show, before Auto Prom every year, as we used to call it, the opening night gala. We would take the
Hmm.
clients there. You'd have to be dressed up in a tuxedo and all that stuff, and you do have to wear a jacket to the London Chop House. So bring one with you, but you won't be disappointed. It's a great spot.
All right. And then after your fancy dinner or your hot dog dinner, whatever you're doing, I really, really recommend you head down to the Sugar House on Michigan Avenue. Best selection of whiskey I've ever seen. Harvey and I were lucky enough to attend a Rolls-Royce event there after the Detroit Auto Show. Harvey gave me the advice that really don't worry about what you're ordering, just don't order the most expensive thing. So unfortunately, I didn't try the Pappy Van Winkle, but outside of that, it was just a really incredible selection. The bartenders are fantastic there and know their selection really, really well and are willing to mix stuff up for you and talk you through what they've got. So head on down for a whiskey to complete your kind of fancy old school auto industry weekend.
Yeah, the Sugar House is
Would be my
not to
suggestion.
be missed. Yep. And I will give you one other piece of advice. Just stay away from the casinos. You've got casinos in Detroit, fine. But if you really want to, have a casino experience, there are a lot better places than Detroit. So,
I love a good casino, but I like it when it's like an old converted building and kind of gives you that cool vibe. So you're telling me Detroit's a lot of,
it's all brand new MGM
yeah,
Grand Casino,
yeah.
that kind of stuff that, was built to save downtown Detroit and has just become a sideshow.
We'll go ahead and skip that.
Yeah. So, lots of fun stuff to do, great places to eat, some great hotels to stay at too. Shinola has a hotel there, and that brand, with their watches and leatherworks and all that stuff, they've created a hotel that kind of captures that experience. It's
Oh, that's
super
cool.
nice, really fun. The Westin Book Cadillac is sort of the classic downtown hotel. If you want to stay right in the center of the action, actually all these are pretty dang close to the track. You can stay at the Marriott in the Renaissance Center, right in the middle of downtown. So, but lots of places to stay downtown. Also, you can head over to Greek Town. There's some great Greek food there.
Mm.
All kinds of, again, just more stuff to do. Get up in the morning, go to Eastern Market. It's one of the great outdoor farmers markets around Detroit. So tons of stuff to do. But we also have a race, and
Yes.
and it's a meaningful race given the trajectory of the season. There's a lot of
Hmm.
things that need to happen. So let's take a couple minutes and talk about who we think really need to show up here.
Yeah, I think that there is one team and within that team, one driver specifically that I am laser focused on, and it is Andretti and Kyle Kirkwood. Um, we talked about it after the 500, right? The way they're talking is not matching what they are putting on the track.
Yeah.
Kyle Kirkwood was strongly positioned by both the people from Andretti and just general media as the potential rival for Alex's championship season. Like
Right.
this is Kyle's the guy who's going to be able to stop Alex from running away with it again. But Kyle specializes in street courses, right?
Yep.
We have 6 on the calendar this year. We've already run 3. He has only won one of those 3. He is not going to make a reasonable championship push if he's not winning at least half of the events that are his kind of signature. So this is a really, really important race for Kyle. And I think if he can't put together a really strong finish, I think a podium finish here,
Yeah.
I am going to start thinking that his championship chances are minuscule,
Yeah. I think
especially given that having lost the second place at the 500, now this is really time for him to cement the fact that he belongs in there.
Yeah, he's 39th. I mean, he's third in the championship, 49 points behind Alex Palou. He is 12 points behind David Maluka. So, not out of it by any chance, but he needs to show well at tracks like this. He holds the track record here. He's the reigning champion at this track.
Mhm.
He is the king of the streets. So, this is an
He
important
should
race for
reasonably
him.
do well here.
And and
He just
and
has to.
yeah, it's an important race for him and Team Andretti. I think the other team I'm looking to and the other driver is McLaren and Pato Award.
Hmm.
again, Pato, he's just been consistently in that 4, 5, 6 area,
Yep.
sits fifth in the championship.
Of course he does. He finishes fifth in every race.
Yeah, I'd love to see him, and McLaren have a better result. They certainly don't seem to be living up to their brand.
Yeah, as we move further into the season and we start looking at overall arcs for teams, McLaren, to me, honestly, I know they've got a win with Christian at Sancio, but I think McLaren's season can be described as kind of forgettable.
Yeah, very
That's
lackluster right
not
now.
great. Look, Pato came alive in the second half of last season as well. Maybe this is a Santino situation where some tracks he likes better are coming up, and we can hope for that for him. But McLaren's got to wake up.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
should try and do it here.
I agree. Otherwise I think it's a wide open race. Detroit is one of those tracks where, you can come out, qualify high, get into a little bit of an incident early in the race, fall to the back, come back and still have a good result because it's a lot of laps. They're short
Hmm.
laps, but it's a lot of laps on this. And because of the dual pit lane, the split pit lane, you don't lose as much time in the pits as you do in a traditional track.
I love a split pit lane.
Yeah.
So fun to watch. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that. Otherwise, I'm just again interested to see how Felix does coming out of the
Sure.
500, see what the hangover does to him. As he said, this hasn't really been a great track for him, but MSR is doing really well this season as a team. So if there were a team championship, and we know of somebody who's
Who's
sponsoring
done the
one,
math on those?
they would it behoove them to do well to maintain their momentum.
Yeah, certainly. Of course, we have to look to see if the Penske drivers can continue this campaign of excellence.
Yeah.
Malukas has not just, finished well in the Indy 500 in a lot of different races. He's just been so wildly consistent, making the top 10 in
Yep.
I think almost every race this year. That's a pretty wild thing coming off of the season they had last year. Again, if you're looking at something like a team championship, Penske is looking really quite strong here,
Oh yeah. I mean,
and watching them continue to grow in that way is really interesting.
to
So,
have their drivers in second, sixth, and eighth place in the championship compared to where they were last year,
wow.
phenomenal. That's a big turnaround. So let's talk about the team championship for a little bit because I did the math. We went through the points.
Yay. We're finally awake enough to do math.
Yeah, and it's there are some surprises here. I think
And just so
not.
everybody knows, I haven't heard these yet. I'm learning
Yeah.
them with you.
So I'm going to start at number 10
Hmm.
because we're not including Dryer
Dry
Reinbold
ramble. Why
because
would
they've
we? That would be
run one
insulting to
race.
them.
Yeah. So JHR is at 93.5 points, still
Okay.
at the bottom of the pack.
Even with
Um,
Renas's strong finish. Yeah.
yeah. AJ Foyt next at 94.3 with
Okay.
even with Santino's strong finish again. So they're at ninth. At eighth, we had one of the teams fall a few places here. That's Ed Carpenter Racing because
That's not a
of
surprise.
their
Three DNFs. Oof.
at Indy. So they're at 96.8. Then Dale Coyne Racing because both Hauger and Grosjean had decent finishes. They're at 101.5 on your
Right?
FM dial. It
What a
just sounds
dad joke.
it sounds like
Jeez. What a freaking dad joke.
that's me. Then you've got RLL at 106.4. So
Okay.
that's where they are. That's in sixth place. So now
Now
here's
I have a guess.
here's our top five. Yeah.
Did Meyer Shank jump McLaren?
Meyer Shank jumped McLaren and Andretti.
What?
So
Whoa.
so in fifth place you have Arrow McLaren at 154.6.
Okay.
Fourth place you have Andretti at 155. So it's razor thin between those two teams.
Wafer thin.
And then with the excellent performance at Indianapolis, Meyer Shank is at 164.5.
That is a significant
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
gap.
gap between them and Andretti. And that's why I think having at least one of those cars do well in Detroit is important to maintain this momentum to see if
Yeah,
they can.
definitely.
So
Wow.
very interested to see that. Then you've got Chip Ganassi racing at 185.7, and Penske, expanded on its lead a little bit. They are at 194.7. So,
Wow.
really interesting to see what happened to Meyer Shank. And, Mike Shank talked about it after the 500 that he feels like they have kicked the door open and they are ready to be a top team
Mm-hmm.
in this series. And if you're going by where they're standing now, yes, they are. And let's just see if
Yeah.
they can maintain this momentum through the rest of the season.
I am so glad we started calculating this. This is fascinating. If Meyershank can manage to hang on to even a top four spot through the end of the season, that is just going to be huge for them.
Yep.
Wow. This
Yeah.
is fascinating. Fantastic. Fantastic work, Harvey.
So there we go. So we're ready for cars to start rolling into Detroit.
I know
Action
it has
practice.
not been that long, and yet it still feels like it's been forever since I watched a race somehow.
Yeah, practice starts Friday afternoon, qualifying Saturday, race on Sunday. We will bring you the post qualifying podcast and then a post race podcast this weekend. So stick around for that. And if you happen to be in Detroit, grab a dog at Dooley's, grab a slice at Buddy's, and enjoy the race.
Drive safe, everybody. For all of us at Rides and Drives Team Radio, I am Kaz. He is Harvey, and we are out.